Welcome back to Andersen Acres. 'Tis the season, we're in the kitchen, and the holidays are upon us. So I have to do some holiday baking. Christmas is this weekend, and I haven't started my baking. That's okay, I bake a lot, it's fine. So the first thing we're gonna make is sugar cookies. These are traditional, soft, fat, delicious sugar cookies that melt in your mouth. They hold their shape really well, so they don't spread when you're baking them. So they're easy to decorate. They're delicious. They are my kids' favorite. I could not go a holiday season without making them. So here we go. You're going to need 1 cup of butter or margarine. Margarine will work. I typically use butter. It's okay to use margarine. It'll work because there's so much sugar in this recipe, you don't even taste the difference. They'll taste a little better with butter, but most people aren't going to notice. I notice, but most people won't. So 1 cup of butter or margarine, it's fine. We're just going to whip that up real quick. Again, I will turn the volume down so you don't hear the mixer as loud because it's kind of grating. So let's do this. That's whipped up nicely. Now we're going to add to that 1 cup of sugar. Yes, you have to use regular sugar. No, you can't use brown sugar. That won't turn out correctly. 1 cup of sugar into your butter. Now we're going to cream that together. Now to that, we are going to add 2 tablespoons of milk. Yes, you have to add the milk. It's already not dairy-free because we used butter, so it doesn't matter. You're going to add about a teaspoon of vanilla. You could add another extract if you wanted to. So you could add a peppermint or a caramel extract. It doesn't really matter. I'm using vanilla because that's what I want the cookies to taste like. But you could change up the extract. Next, let me crack my egg here. You're going to need 1 egg. Only 1 egg. You don't really need more than 1 egg. Okay? 1 egg, nicely cracked. There we go. And that shell. You're going to cream all of that together with your electric beater. You could do it by hand, but this part is faster if you just use your electric beater. But I'm using my hand mixer, not a stand mixer, because I'm not going to use this for very long. So here we go. There, now we are not going to use the electric beater anymore. I'm going to switch to a wooden spoon just because that's what's going to work for me. You can do this entirely using the beaters. I don't like to. I'm going to use a wooden spoon and my hands. Okay, that looks good to me. Nice and creamy. Got a little on my finger there. That's okay. So the next thing we're going to add, 3 cups of flour, regular flour. You can try to do this with a whole wheat or something if you wanted to. It's not going to work, but you could try. Doesn't work. So there we go, 3 cups of flour. Just kind of mush that around a little bit. I'm going to use my hands in a minute, so it doesn't matter. Then we're going to do 1½ teaspoons of baking powder, not soda, baking powder. Don't mix those 2 up. They do 2 different things. Now we are going to do ½ teaspoon of salt. It's not a lot of salt, but you do need it. It keeps your cookies from being one-dimensional. It'll elevate your flavors. So almost all of my cookie recipes will have a little smidgen of salt in there. Okay, that looks mixed up just fine. I know it doesn't look like a dough yet. No big deal. We're going to stop using the wooden spoon because we don't need it anymore. And we're going to get in there with our hands. Roll up your sleeves. Sometimes I make a mistake of not rolling up my sleeves. Roll them up, or you get flour on them. And then just get your hand in there and just start smushing it around. Let that butter go between your fingers. It's just easier to do it with your hands. I know it looks kind of messy, but this way you can feel the dough forming. And you'll know if it's getting stiff because you don't want a truly stiff dough. Your dough should still be soft, but it should be able to be rolled out. So if you overmix, you can end up with a stiff dough and you don't want that. So I like to do it with my hand. It's just easier. You can use a mixer if you like, but I tend not to for this part. I do for beating my eggs or for creaming my sugars, just because I'm not going to sit there with the wooden spoon or a whisk for 20 minutes creaming things. It's not worth it. That's looking better. See, it does start to form up really quick. It doesn't take long at all. So this is going to have to be refrigerated before we can roll it out. That's normal for a rolled cookie dough. You want it to hold its shape really well while you're working with it. So we are going to stick it in the fridge. We're going to cover it before we stick it in the fridge. We're not just going to stick it in the fridge like this. That's why I'm using these containers that have lids. So we're going to cover it up, stick it in the fridge once we have a nicely formed dough here, which we don't quite have yet. See, there's still a lot that isn't incorporated. So you want to make sure it's incorporated before you do anything else. And keep taking these chunks off your fingers if you're doing it, because you want those in there. And this makes a decent amount of cookies. I'm going to make, based on the thickness I'm going to make them, I'll probably get 2 dozen because of the size. I'm making candy canes this year. Last year, what did I do? I think I did stockings. I don't do the same every year because that gets boring. Nobody likes boring. So this year, whoa, I'm splattering cookie dough. That's fine. Don't worry about it. Cookie dough, put it back in. No big deal. Everyone makes a mess when baking sometimes. That's the way it goes. As long as you clean it up after, nobody cares. There we go. Ooh, there's a dog in here. Okay, so that's looking really nice. And it feels really nice. It should feel consistent, so you shouldn't feel like a grainy portion over here from where sugar didn't dissolve or whatever. It should feel fairly consistent and fairly soft. So that's looking really good. We're going to put this in here. This is why I use this bowl, because it has a lid. I'm going to put this in here, and we're just going to let it sit in the fridge for about 30 to 60 minutes. I'm probably going to go about 45 minutes, but you can let it sit in there overnight if you need to. Just make sure it's covered so it doesn't dry out. So we'll stick that in the fridge, and we'll come back in about 45 minutes and roll it out. All right, our cookie dough is chilled, so we're just going to turn it out like that. We are probably going to need our bowl, by the way. We'll have to put unused dough back in the bowl to keep it chilled between batches. So what you want to do now is you need a cookie sheet off to the side that is lined with something non-stick. I'm using my copper pan liners. You can use whatever you need. You can use parchment paper, you can use tin foil. Tin foil sticks a little bit, but you can use tin foil. I'm using my copper liners like I usually do. Preheat your oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit before you start rolling out your dough. Now, I'm going to roll my dough out to about 3/8 of an inch thick, or thereabouts. Go gently, because your dough is cold from the fridge. Okay, so you want to make sure you go gently, because you don't want to crack the heck out of your dough. But I'm using my rolling pin that actually is very specific for height here. So, yeah, I can easily roll it out to 3/8 of an inch without too much of a problem. There we go. The dog is barking because he's outside. He doesn't like being outside. I'm going to gently... No, I'm not. Never mind, I'm not going to. I was going to lift it, but it's a little bit sticky because it is a sticky dough. So if you have trouble with it sticking, make sure you have flour off to the side. So it's sticking a little on the top. So we're just going to put a little bit of flour on the top. Move that around. That'll just keep it from sticking to a rolling pin too much. There we go. That's better. So just roll that out. I'm doing about 3/8 of an inch thickness. You can do whatever thickness works for you. I do 3/8 of an inch just because I like them thick, and they should be fairly thick, these cookies. You can even do 1/2 inch if you want. Don't go thicker than a 1/2 inch or they won't bake in the center. There we go. That's about right. Now we're gonna let the dog in just a moment. He won't stop barking unless I let him in. Yes, Dog is in the house now. Problem solved. We're going to get our cookie cutter. I'm using a candy cane this year. I do a slightly different shape every year. This year, candy canes. Push straight down because I'm not using a perfectly round cutter, no twisting. If your cookie comes out like that, that's fine. You just go over to your cookie sheet, push it out directly on top of your cookie sheet. So you don't have to move it around too much. Then do another one. And another one. There we go. These cookies do not spread too badly on the pan. They only spread a very little bit. So you can put them fairly close together. You're going to want to leave at about a 1/2 inch minimum between them. So you don't want to overload your pan because you don't want them touching. Okay. So just get as many as you can, then you're going to re-roll your dough anyway. So just get a bunch in there. There we go. And I just like candy canes this year. You certainly don't have to do candy canes. You can do really whatever you have a hankering for. I'm doing candy canes because I didn't last year. Here we go. So you just do as many of these as you can. There we go. And remember, if you do have one that sticks in the thing, just take it out over your cookie sheet because it is less hassle for you long run. There we go. Here we go. Here's another one. There we are. This way. Yeah, just fit as many as you can because the fewer times you have to re-roll, the better. That's probably a bad place to put one, but you know what? We're going with it anyway. You're just going to go with it because that wasn't the best place to put one, but we did. There's nothing we can do about it now. There we go. All right, now we need a spatula. I use my mother's ancient spatula. You'll see this one in a lot of cookie recipes just because I like it. It gets under these really well. You want something that's pretty flat and fairly sharp. Like this one is not a thick spatula at all. If you look, it's very, very thin. So that's what we want. We want a really thin spatula because that's what works. That's what transfers best because it gets right underneath the cookie without ripping the bottom of your cookies. And that's really important when you're doing cookies. You don't want to tear up the bottom. So remember, your oven is heated to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. There we go. And that's important. You don't want it too warm because if you go warmer than that, your cookies will burn. But if it's not warm enough, your cookies will not be cooked in the center. And you do want them thoroughly cooked. They are going to be a softer cookie. Again, this cookie does not snap. This is a nice, soft, thick sugar cookie, which is fantastic because I love this recipe. And I've never had anyone disappointed in these. There we go. So just do a whole bunch of these. Get them on your tray. Remember, 400 degrees Fahrenheit. They're going to bake for about 10 minutes. Actually, exactly 10 minutes. You do not want to underbake them, but if you bake them more than that, they'll start to get stiff. And you don't want stiff. See, this one broke a little bit. Just fix that with your finger. Push it back together. It'll be fine. Just push it back together. Give it a little pinch. When it bakes, it'll be fine. Yeah. Couple more left to go. Okay, so now we're going to throw those in the oven. There. So these are going in the oven at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for exactly 10 minutes. We'll come back when we pull them out of the oven. All right, it has been exactly 10 minutes since we put our cookies into the oven. We're going to pull them out, see how they did. Oh, they look good. You want the edges just barely starting to turn brown. Just barely. You wait too long and the bottoms are going to be hot. Hard. Sorry, not hot. They should be hot. They just came out of the oven. So we are going to set a kitchen timer for exactly 1 minute. Not any less than that, because we need to leave them cooling on the pan for exactly 1 minute. So in the meantime, we're going to go back and get our spatula. We are going to get the spatula that I stole from Mom, the really, really thin, really, really great spatula. If you have one of these, never let it go. These are really thin. That's what you want, super thin. So we're waiting the full minute. Then we're going to cool them on our wire rack fully. They need to be fully, fully cooled. We are going to ice these. Probably not doing that for a couple of days because tomorrow I am going to make a gluten-free version of these cookies because I do have a sister who is celiac. She can't have gluten at all, period. No gluten for her. So we're going to her house for Christmas Eve. She can't eat these. I'm bringing these. So I am actually going to bring a gluten-free alternative for her. So tomorrow we're doing that. Day after, we're going to ice both sets of cookies. There we go, full minute. Gently transfer. Be gentle, especially because this is a candy cane. So you don't want to get too excited. If you get too excited, that tip will break off. Now these have to cool fully before we touch them. So put them on your cooling rack. Just leave them there. Just ignore them. And once they are fully cooled, you can ice them. You could put chocolate on them. You could do whatever you would like to do with your cookies. We are going to use cookie icing to ice them, but not today. So do whatever you like with your cookies, but let them cool fully before you do it. Now these ones can be stored in an airtight container for about 5 days. They can also be frozen. If you want to freeze them, do it before you ice them. Ideally, you can freeze them after you ice them, but it's not quite as effective. Okay, we're just going to put a couple of these ones on top of each other because our cooling rack's not really big enough. That's okay. Space them out on top like that. And that's about it. Don't they look lovely? They are going to taste delicious. They're going to be fantastic cookies. So that's it for us today here at Andersen Acres. All we wanted to do was bake our sugar cookies. Tune in tomorrow to learn how to do these same types of cookies without gluten in case you do have someone in your family that you need to accommodate. And the day after, we're going to decorate these cookies. We're going to make a flood icing and we are going to jazz them up. See you tomorrow.